Okay, we are rolling.
Fantastic.
All right, everyone, welcome to our SMSF webinar. It's a bit of a different SMSF webinar because Lisa from SupaVest actually has a new style of SMSF product or opportunity to the market, really, relatively new to the Australian market, to offer to us and describe or advise how that works. So I'll just give you a little bit of a spiel. We have to open every webinar with a spiel. Lisa is a seasoned property investor, and she's going to share her journey to financial freedom through SMSF property investment with us. She'll reveal her first-hand experience, streamlining the process of acquiring property within her SMSF, and she'll explain to you the advantages of investing in new house and land packages, which is the new part to SMSF, compared to the traditional structures. By the end of the webinar, you'll gain a comprehensive understanding of strategic planning for maximizing tax benefits and capital gains in SMSF property investment. So with that, Lisa, I'll hand it over to you.
Look, thank you so much, Lana. Thank you for inviting me to come along. What I'm going to do is just going to share my screen, if that's okay.
Yes.
Click on a few buttons here and then over to now. Can you see a session with SupaVest?
It's just loading. There it is.
Perfect. Okay, so yes, the benefits of investing in new house and land builds inside a self-managed super fund. So first of all, of course, I have to put a disclaimer in. Anything I talk about here is just general information in nature. I am not qualified to give financial advice, and SupaVest is not giving any financial advice throughout this presentation. Something I am allowed to do, though, is actually talk about my own personal journey, and I actually started my journey with SupaVest as a client. I am in the process myself of building an NDIS property inside my husband and mine self-managed super fund. So I'll tell you a little bit about that later on as we get going. So another quick general disclaimer, when you're actually seeking advice, and this applies to me as well, just understand when you're seeking advice, understand who you're talking to in general. So what they cannot advise on, what personal preferences they have, how they get paid, who pays them. Look, I guess understanding biases in that degree. Look, my bias is property. Obviously, that's where my love is, and I obviously earn a wage from it. So just understanding where you're getting your advice from, sort of what sits behind that there as well. So a little bit about us. SupaVest has been around for about 4 years. We're the brainchild of our managing director, Raymond Hempstead, who's an accountant by trade. Now, he obviously, like we all sort of know, that he found out very quickly that there was a little niche in the market whereby investors wanting to invest in property inside a self-managed super fund were limited to apartments, townhouses, or existing property that was sold as a single part contract, or perhaps the odd build that a builder could actually carry right through to completion. But as we know, with the prices of properties going up all the time, there's less and less builders that are actually able to carry that right through to completion, and essentially they're carrying the full cost. So Raymond worked very closely with the ATO, and he created what we call essentially our SupaVest solution. And this is where we now provide we are, I guess, the facilitators, if you like, of being able to turn a two-part contract into a single part contract to sell to the SMSF investor. And that's just what I want to go through and talk to you about today, how that's all possible, and also the reasons why we should be looking at that. And if it's, I guess you've got to make that decision between yourself and with your financial advisors. But just understanding, where you buy in terms of the entity, and just why that really can make a really big difference, and why it's really important to get that right from the start. So we're all aware with superannuation in this country, we have two choices. So you've got the industry super funds, which I think pretty much all of us start off with, where our employer will put some money into an industry super fund. And then generally as you go through life, you get, your super balance is building up a little bit, and then you get the choice of maybe doing a self-managed super fund. Look, there's no hard and fast figure as to at what point you can or can't be looking at that. What they generally say, obviously there's costs involved with both. Now, with an industry super fund, they generally take their costs are based on a percentage of the value of your super fund, amongst other things. So quite often, the higher you get in value of or balance of your super fund, the more cost it's going to be. Self-managed super fund, it can cost anything from $3,000, $6,000, $7,000 to set up initially, but then your ongoing costs tend to be more fixed year after year. You've got the running costs of an SMSF, yearly auditing, which can be around $2,500 to $3,000 totals. But the good thing about a self-managed super fund is whether you've got, $300,000, $3 million, your costs don't vary that much. So look, accountants have told me, and obviously I'm not qualified to say any of this, but what I've been told is they usually say if you've got around about 150 to 200,000 in an industry super fund, you should be starting to have a look at maybe a self-managed super fund to see if that's suitable for you, because cost-wise, they end up starting to sort of be very similar. And then once you go over that, it actually tends to be a little bit more cost-effective to have a self-managed super fund. But of course, the other benefit, and what I love about it, is having the flexibility to be able to invest in various assets, including high-yield cash flow property. And that's really what I'm focusing on here as well. Something that you really don't get to control inside an industry super fund. So I guess yesterday, the advice was we were looking at apartments, townhouses, or, as I said, a small selection of house and land builds that a builder could carry through, because the government dictates, as part of the SIS Act, as part of having a self-managed super fund, that every purchase of property needs to be as a single acquirable asset, as a single part contract, if you like, if there is any lending or any borrowings attached to that purchase. If, of course, the client is paying for that outright, well, then all bets are off. There's not a problem with there as well. Or, of course, yes, the builder carries 100% of the cost right through. I want to give you a little bit of an example of a high cash flow property. So this example is an NDIS property. Its value is $890,000. The loan term is 20 years. The gross income, $2,154 per week, which is probably very conservative now for an NDIS property. Purchased at 40 years, tax paid over the 26 years. So if you're buying that outside of super and you're buying that personally in your own name, based up to the top tax rate, 47% tax, during that period you'll be paying $714,265 in tax during that period. Had you purchased that outside of super, but under a company structure, a family trust, a unit trust, that type of thing, generally a tax rate around the 30%, the tax paid is around the $455,000. What we've now got the opportunity to do is actually do exactly what we could outside of super with the help of SupaVest, but doing it inside a self-managed super fund. Now, the reason we want to do this is twofold. First of all, it's the tax benefits, which tax paid inside a self-managed super fund prior to retiring is capped at 15% tax. So in this example, the tax paid over that period would be $227,000. A saving of up to the 486. But of course, once you retire after the age of 60, the tax rate drops to 0, and that's something that is really, really enticing for people. The other thing that actually really excites me more so is the capital gains benefit side of it all. So that same property, if you were buying that outside of super, whether it's personally or under a company structure, and you go to sell that at some point in the future, you're going to be paying capital gains tax essentially until the day you die. There's no nice way to say that, based on the tax rate at the time when you're selling. But have you done that in super? It's 10% capital gains if you sell that after the first year of owning it, inside a self-managed super fund, prior to retiring. But the big thing for me is it's actually 0 capital gains tax if you sell that after the age of 60. Now, this is something that really came home to me recently. So as I mentioned, I started off as a client of SupaVest. Now, it's just over 2 years ago, we signed up to build an NDIS property. Before that, before I actually knew about SupaVest, my husband and I actually built a duplex using the equity in our own home, thinking we're doing the right thing. But of course, instead of even doing it under a company structure, we just did it over here as just personally. Now, it's done very well. It's gone up over 400,000 in a couple of years. And having a chat with the accountant recently, just about, our options and that, I said, okay, well, look, maybe we look at this 400,000 equity in there. Maybe we look at perhaps, how can we sell that? I've got 2 daughters in their early 20s, maybe looking at giving them some money to put to, a deposit for a house, that type of thing. And he said, well, look, that's well and good, but you're going to lose about 120, 130,000 in capital gains tax just because of where we purchased it. Now, had we done that inside super, and okay, look, we can't release the funds until retirement, but I am 56. I'm not that far away. Look, if we had sold that property inside super, that would have been 40,000. Had we held on to that and sold that after we retire, it would have been 0 capital gains. So this for me is as important as the actual ongoing tax benefits as well. And the capital gains benefit side, it seems to be the thing that people don't focus on. If you're looking at it like as a long-term investment strategy, really need to give this some consideration, I think, because this is a big one. So the other benefits of buying a house and land in the self-managed super fund, obviously you can leverage, you can borrow up to 80% now inside a self-managed super fund with a lot of the SMSF lenders that we have, the second-tier lenders. We've got obviously capital growth potential on standalone house and land. As we all know, it's the land that appreciates in value, not the building as such. So standalone property does tend to go up in value better than an apartment or a townhouse, so they tell us. You've got the depreciation of a whole brand new build that you can claim, usually better rent, more desirable on a new property than a second-hand property, and of course fewer repairs. You're not having to buy on someone else's problem, essentially, anyone's maintenance issues, and of course body corporate fees, they should be non-existent if you're buying a standalone house and land. So now this is all possible. So what we bring to the party, I guess, is choice. We give you the choice to build what you want, where you want, and with who you want. So as SupaVest, we actually work with over 300 builders around the country. We get their 2-part house and land pricing in. We calculate that in, turn it into a single part contract price, and then that's what we're actually able to sell to the SMSF investor. But we're also about giving full choice, as I said, and it can be anything that the investor or their buyer's agent or whoever finds for them. We can turn any property anywhere in Australia, with the exception of islands. Tasmania is fine, but we just can't get funding ourselves to do some of the small islands. But if someone goes down to a display village on the weekend and sees a nice little house and land package that they like, but they want to build that inside their super fund, we can package that up for them too. So so long as it's a single acquirable asset, we're taking the burden off the builders, which they're absolutely loving. I have a lot of builders that are actually my clients as well, and now they're seeing this as, oh, great, they don't now have to carry this burden right through to completion. They've got, and we're saying some builders could only do 1 or 2, some maybe 5 a year, that was it. But it's like this now has opened up a massive big opportunity, because essentially every package out there that's sold as a 2-part contract, we can now turn into a single part contract. So that's opened up a whole big world for them, a whole big world for the investors. And again, it's all about choice there. So how it works. So you decide on the specific builder, the location, the property type, and we obviously give you the full choice of your investment. We're not builders, we're not developers. I see us actually as facilitators, essentially. It's up to the investor to do their due diligence. We simply will process, facilitate that 2-part package into a single part to make it possible for the SMSF to be able to build that inside. Now, the SMSF, once we get that house and land package in, we run it through our calculators, which I'll give you an example of very shortly, and turn that into that single part contract price. Once we got that single part contract price, we then, as SupaVest, require a 35% deposit from the SMSF to then go into contract. It's 35% in every state except Queensland. Queensland, it's 32.75. There's slightly different rules here. If it goes over 33%, it becomes an instalment contract. And instead of changing our contracts for one state, we just drop the percentage of deposit required for this state. So we keep our contracts the same across the country. So once the SMSF investor has paid us the 35% deposit, SupaVest then buys the land. We then go into contract with the builder to build it. We make all the payments along the way to get that property completed. On completion, the SMSF is then paying out the balance. So generally that means getting a loan for the 65% LVR to settle. And that's obviously where Lana can come in and help you with as well. So just give you a little bit of an example. So say, we went sort of signed down at the display village, house and land, 538, 414. Now, most of us are aware that by the time you got the keys to the front door, it's costing you more than that, okay? That's the price for the land and the build, but there's also stamp duty and other costs involved. There could be interest, establishment fees, loan application fee, legal fees, settlement costs, all that sort of thing. So it turns that 538 into 570. So if you were buying that and doing that build outside as a two-part contract construction, it's costing you 570,374 for this example as a two-part contract build. Now, for us to then take that further and take that to a single part contract, we actually get hit with extra costs. So we get, first of all, we have our fee, which is 10,000 plus GST. And then we get actually hit with land tax, which unfortunately we have to pass on. Obviously, there's rates. We build in extra insurances in case the builder goes belly up, and there's also a vacancy insurance built in there to cover us between completion and settlement with the SMSF. We also build in between 6 to 8 quantity surveyor visits. Because we're building hundreds of properties around the country, we can't physically go out and check each of the payment stages throughout the build. Send someone out there to make sure the slab is down when we've got to pay the bill for that, etc. We have double legal fees. So we actually have a contract with the SMSF and a contract with the builder, and those two mirror each other. There's warehouse mortgage lender setup costs. There's internal admin fees. There's actually extra interest we have to build in over and above what would have been factored in here, because we actually get hit with quite high construction funding interest, and there is a GST component. So on this example, that adds our fee plus the extra holding cost. So it takes that as a single part contract price to 611,595. Now, just to give you an example, my own NDIS property, it costs 55,000 more to purchase inside super compared to outside. But when you're dealing with an SMS, you very quickly understand that the cost to actually get it there is far outweighed by the benefits, the tax benefits, the capital gains benefits. If you're looking at a short-term project, if you're looking at maybe doing this and flipping it in a year or two and selling it, look, it's probably not worth the extra cost to get it into super. But if you're looking at a long-term investment strategy and you're wanting to put it in there and grow your wealth portfolio within your SMSF, then the cost to get it in there are very quickly negated. In fact, you probably, by the time the property's finished, it's already gone up way over this in value anyway. So what type of properties can you build? So we've got standard house and land, dual key, duplex. So dual key could be a property similar to a duplex, but it's not on two titles. A dual key, quite often it can be, say, 3 bedrooms on one side and maybe 1 or 2 on the other. Duplex is, of course, with 2 separate titles, it's strata titled. We have co-living and rooming houses, or NDIS. We also have DHA coming shortly as well. So of course, again, you choose the property type, you choose the builder, you choose where you build. So I want to actually run through my own little example now. I'm just going to jump out of this for a minute, and I just want to talk to you a little bit about what I'm doing. I'm going to share my screen now. I'll just talk to you for a little bit first. So with my own journey, my husband and I, we've decided to, we looked into the whole NDIS thing. We decided, okay, so we've heard a little bit about it. I want to find out a little bit more. So before I went down this path, I did a lot of research. Okay, we've heard a lot of good, bad, and ugly about NDIS. Gosh, you name it, I heard it. A few things I found out along the way was when the NDIS first came about. Now, actually, I'll just back up here. One of my first fears was, okay, I've heard about this NDIS. It sounds too good to be true. What happens if they turn the NDIS off? Okay, so when I looked into it, it's legislated for 20 years. Now we're roughly about 6 years into it. Now to get it legislated across the country, every state in Australia had to actually agree to have it introduced. To turn it off, they'll have to agree as well. Now, a lot of people say, oh gosh, it's costing the country way too much money, which it is costing a lot of money. But what they actually are forgetting is that it actually is saving them money as well. Because I'm not sure whether you remember, I remember probably about 20, 30 years ago, there was a lot of articles on TV that were talking about, unless anyone that's, say, disabled, paraplegic, that type of thing, the only place that we had in this country to look after them, where they needed around-the-clock care, was in nursing homes or hospitals. And what it was ended up being, it was costing all over each participant. So a renter in the NDIS space is actually called a participant. It was actually costing over $1 million per participant to house these high physical support people in hospitals or nursing homes. So when you look at it like that, it's actually saving them, saving the government a lot of money in this regard. And look, it's also a little bit of a win-win-win, the NDIS, because not only is the government saving money, they're incentivising investors like me with really good rents, and I'll talk about that in a second. But most importantly is we are building these custom-built houses that are designed for their special needs. If they're high physical support, they've got reinforced ceilings over the bedrooms so they can retrofit hoists. They've got solar panels, battery backup. They've got intercom in all the rooms, extra wide doorways, turning circles, kitchen with lower benches. So these are purpose-built so that the participants can live comfortably, and ideally they're looking for their forever home to live there. So a bit of a win-win-win. So, okay, I looked into this whole NDIS thing. So what is this all about? And look, I heard a lot of things. Oh, don't look at NDIS. I knew someone who went down this line and they had a house and it sat empty they couldn't rent it. So I looked into that. And what happened when the NDIS first came out is you were getting a lot of builders were jumping on. They were building houses with ramps and grab bars and things like that, selling them as NDIS houses. The problem is they weren't to NDIS certification. So come time to actually try and get them rented by an NDIS participant, they didn't meet certification, and they essentially had a house with a ramp and grab bars that actually they could only rent to the general market. Then you move on, the builders were actually getting a little bit more savvy. Okay, so they were building properties that actually were NDIS compliant, but they had a bit of a build it and they will come philosophy going on. And what was happening there is they had these great houses, they were NDIS certified, but they weren't building the type of property that was needed in the locations where the demand was. So again, you were having this problem that you had these great houses, but you had no one to rent them because they weren't the type of property that was needed. So now what we're doing is you're finding that NDIS packages, if you like, now that are coming through, have an SDA provider connected to them. So an SDA provider is a bit like a property manager to me, but they're also the one that actually finds the participants to move into the property. Okay, so they coordinate a lot of their care, their on-site carers. They also sort out their NDIS payments and that type of thing as well. The SDA provider takes on a head lease over your property, and then they sublet the room. So it's a non-financial lease. It just pretty much gives them control over your property to be able to try and fill that as much as possible. Now, the SDA providers, they earn 12.5%, usually is the figure across the board, of the rental income from the property. So, it's in their best interest to try and, fill that property as much as possible. Now, in the NDIS field, you've got 4 different levels, if you like. You've got high physical support, you've got fully accessible, and then you've got improved livability. And then I put 4th one over on the side here, which is robust. Now, the reason I do that, high physical support is the top level. It's a top level of income, but also it's a more expensive build as well because, reinforced bits and pieces, as I was explaining before. But that top level can also house the fully accessible level down, which is still people potentially in wheelchairs needing, accessibility. They could also house the next level down, which is improved livability. And that's more people with cognitive dysfunction, perhaps blindness, that type of thing. So those three can live obviously in that top level. The top level obviously can't live in a lower level property. So a lot of high physical support houses were being built, and the house, the NDIS property my husband and I are building, is a high physical support as well. The one on the side here is robust, and look, as the name suggests, that's a really quite a tough build. And look, it's nice way to say this. It's built tough because the participants in there are going to give it a bit of a hard time, I guess. It's more for mental health conditions, and normally they can only take one robust participant plus a carer. So what you find in the high physical support, fully accessible, improved livability homes, they're normally either 2 or 3 participants and a carer. In the robust, generally it's 1 participant and a carer. Look, occasionally you may see a two participant robust, but it really gets down to the type of participant and whether they can actually live with someone else or not. What we're also seeing come through now is a hybrid type of build, which is a 2-bedroom robust with a carer's room, but it can also cater for 2 improved livability at the lower level or 1 robust as well. So that sort of thing is interesting for investors, because they say, well, actually I can hedge my bets either way. The thing with NDIS is I sign up to build a high physical support house, and my property is up in Townsville that we're building, but I don't actually know until the property is completed what level of participant is going to be actually moving in to rent that property. Now, I'm hoping it's the higher level, because actually it's way more income for me, but my STA provider is obviously going to try and fill that with as many people as he can. It may only get 2 participants in there, leaving the 3rd room empty, which is totally fine. But as of the 1st of July last year, the government actually increased the NDIS rates across the country. Some of them went up, about 40%. But another thing that they actually did change was that was the increased figures were based on 2 or less people sharing in the house, which actually makes a lot of sense to me, because when you're thinking about it, it is a share home. You've got 2 people who really don't know each other, well, not when they move in anyway, and you essentially got them trying to live together. Now, what we're finding coming through now is where that extra participant bedroom, that 3rd bedroom would have been, they've got a secondary living area, and that to me just makes a lot more sense. But 2 strangers in there, it's good. It just makes more sense to actually have a secondary living area in case they've got visitors or they want to, go and watch TV in a different room, that type of thing, as opposed to having to just take them to their bedroom if they want to have some time out and that sort of thing. So it's a little bit of a shift that's happened there. But some of the figures that we're seeing come through now, so high physical support as of the 1st of July last year is paying around, depending on location, there's no hard and fast rates just set. It depends on their level of disability, what they've been assessed at, also location. The pricing can vary based on the location as well. But high physical support is paying around about the 75 to 95,000 rent per room if there's 2 or less people in the house. If it's 3 people or less, then it's the per room rate does drop. Then you've got the next level down. It can be between 75, 85-ish, and then improved livability a bit lower than that as well. Robust, depending again on the location, 85-ish, 90 for the room that we're seeing come through. So based on that, I did my figures, and I'm thinking, okay, so if I look at that, I'm trying to sort of think, okay, maybe 75 per room, maybe only 2 people is sort of what I'm really hoping that I can achieve there. But before I go, I want to actually show you some of my figures of something what I'm going to do in a minute. But I just want to just quickly run through a little bit about just the NDIS properties, I guess, just to sort of understand them more. So as I mentioned, ceilings in the bedrooms been reinforced so they can take the hoist. They're retrofitted at the cost of the participant. The bathrooms are all set up for disabled access. Obviously, they're extra wide, they're extra, big. They've got special disabled toilets and things like that. Solar panels plus battery backup on the house. They've got, in case the participant requires oxygen, that type of thing, they need that battery backup. Intercoms next to the room so they can let people in through the front door, and of course everything's got to be measured up for wheelchair accessibility and that type of thing. Look, for me, I guess the pros of NDIS property, obviously the income makes it really attractive and possible. If it wasn't, I couldn't do it. But also the social aspect, knowing that you're potentially helping someone move from what could be a suboptimal living conditions to what could be their forever home. It just feels good. Look, the SDA provider taking on the head lease. This could be anything from 2 to 20 years. This, for me, provides security. Provides security for the participant, knowing that the property will remain fit for use and not turned into someone's private home, for example. Look, it can, if someone wants to exit out of the NDIS property and sell it, they certainly can. With the rental incomes coming in, not quite sure why you would, but when you go to sell that, you can actually technically be selling that as a commercial premises as a going concern. I'll tell you some figures in a minute. I guess for me, the other pro was the fact that I actually don't have to deal with tenants. The SDA provider is a bit of a conduit for us. And look, the other thing too with my investor hat on was essentially with the NDIS properties, they have essentially a carer that is there doing shift work around the clock. So from my point of view, I've actually got someone on hand that's there to not only help them personally cook and clean, but I just feel like my investment is going to be much better looked after because they've got someone there actually, on a daily basis. I guess the cons, look, the house does cost more. Look, I think there's yearly certifications to be maintained. That not that costly. The SDA provider handles that for me. The property has to have SDA certification on completion prior to being someone moving in. Of course, the SDA provider property management fees, if you like, a little bit higher, 12.5% of the rental income compared to 8% or whatever for a normal property manager. But as far as I'm concerned, they do a lot more, and it's worth every cent. Just need to factor that into the figures. Look, it can take longer to find tenants than a normal rental. You are fishing in a smaller pond compared to the normal rental market, and the process can take time. So you may need to allow 2 to 3 months after completion. However, by engaging your SDA provider early in the piece, they're starting to actually find participants, to move into your property before it's completed. Once they've got a completion date, they can actually start doing this. Now, I actually got excited and I engaged my SDA provider like way early in the piece. So he's almost like family now because my build time has gone over. But we've had quite a few delays with my build, unfortunately, but we are getting there. So it really is. It really is a win-win situation. As I said, we win, we're well compensated with great rentals for a custom-built house. Government wins, is saving a massive amount of money, but of course the participant wins. But look, something you need to, I guess, understand is like any property, like anything, anywhere, they don't come with a guarantee. Okay, there's no guarantee of getting the place, getting a participant in. But if you do your due diligence and really research, you can actually find, places that that are demand. What I'm going to do is actually share my screen here. Oops, I can't type tonight. I'm just going to quickly share. Okay, so if you Google SDA demand data, you can come up with this website. And this is really quite interesting because you can actually come down here and find the demand in different areas. And let me just show you. There's Casey North and Casey South. It was one I was looking at just earlier today. This is an area in Victoria. And if I have a look at this, and I'm going to put another one up here. If I declare this with, say, let's go, here we go. Let's go here. So what this is telling me is, based on these different areas, the number of participants with SDA funding, the participants with SDA funding that are not currently in a property, this has all changed actually since I looked at this last. Participants with SDA funding, additional participants. Oh, this has really, really changed. Okay, that's different. Again, what we did have was a side on the side here that actually showed us who was actually waiting for total funding or an SDA need. So what this does is actually just shows you the demand in that area. Now, I was going to actually just jump on the SDA demand map, see if that's going to bring it up for me. I think it's one of these. They've moved quite a bit of these websites around, which is a little bit frustrating. Yeah, they've all changed. It's really interesting. So I did have actually my SDA demand map there, but that's actually moved. That's all right. So there are some websites, I'll dig them out anyway, and I can share them with Lana, that where you can actually jump on and see where the demand is around the country. The problem is that they're about 2 to 3 months behind in the actual real figures of what's actually happening. Now, what I wanted to show you was my own journey, and these are actually my own real figures. I'm just going to enlarge that a little bit so you can see it a bit better. Now, something I'm actually going to be doing, can you see my own NDIS journey on the screen?
Yes.
Yep, thank you.
Yep.
All right. Something really cool that we can actually do with a high yield property, and I'm going to show you this because I want you to sort of just get, just plant this little seed, if you like. With a self-managed super fund, as you're probably aware, once you purchase the property, you actually can't use the equity in that property. So once you've purchased it, settled with SupaVest, you've got, say, 300,000 or 400,000 equity in it. You can't access that. You can't free that up. You can't use that equity against another property unless you sell the property, and then you free that up to then go and buy, 1 or 2 other properties. But what I'm actually going to do here, this is my own figures. So about 2.5 years ago, we signed up to build this NDIS property in Townsville. Now, it is a little bit of a running joke with SupaVest because it has been the longest build I think that they've ever had, and it just happens to be mine. Now, we purchased just at the tail end of COVID, and we got quite a bit of delay. I think we bought pretty much the first property in a brand new development in Townsville, and to our, we didn't know at the time, but it actually ended up taking about 12 months to get the property titled. So we had delays with titling, then we got hit with a trade delay, and now it's a supply delay. So we're about 2 months away from being completed. The good side of that, though, is that same property has now gone up about 300,000 in value of the packages that we're actually selling up there now. So what I paid was 785,000. That was the single part contract price. We put down 257,229 as our 32.75% deposit that we paid. So it leaves a balance of 528. Plus, because my build time has gone over, unfortunately, I'm going to be hit with a little bit more interest to pay SupaVest, and then I've got stamp duty on that when I settle. Now, I could quite easily just settle with 67.25% LVR to pay that off when the property is completed. However, what I'm actually able to do is, with high yield properties like NDIS and rooming houses, I'll tell you a little bit about rooming houses in a sec, is we're actually, if the investor wants, and something I'm trying to achieve, is we actually have the ability to be able to push settlement until the property is tenanted. Now, what that then allows me to do on these style of properties is get a commercial valuation done, and then I'm actually able to get an 80% LVR on that new valuation. Now, my exact figures here were used as an example with Granite and Homestar, a couple of the lenders that lend in the SMSF space. And they put my commercial valuation on this property between 1.1 and 1.2 mil conservatively. Now, that was based on if I have two participants renting at, say, around the 150,000 rent. All right. Now, they'll then allow me to take 80% LVR borrowing against that new valuation, which comes in above 100% of my original single part contract price. So there's a very high chance that I'm going to be able to borrow 100% of that, 785, releasing my original deposit that I paid to SupaVest, the 257,000, back into my super fund to do it again. Now, the reason I say I should possibly be able to do this, it works on paper. I am Exhibit A for the company, and they're all saying, for goodness sake, will you hurry up and get this property finished? Obviously, it's out of my control. We're waiting for the builder to complete it, but there's no reason why this can't work. We have known of this same structure happening with rooming houses, where clients have also been able to get the property tenanted, then settle, and then take that to a higher LVR to borrow and release some of their original deposit back. So my aim is to try and rinse and repeat, and then grow my property portfolio like that. So just some figures here that you might find interesting. So the full price that I paid at the time, the rental, look, it might be more, it might be slightly less. We've got quite conservative figures there. To calculate the commercial valuation on that, as you're probably aware, is 10 times the yearly rental. They fudge it down by 20%, factor in a vacancy rate, and that's what put it in between the 1.1 and 1.2. In fact, they even say it's probably more likely now 1.3 on those figures, but we've just erred on the side of being very conservative on this. 8% interest factored in there. The property management fees, but for the STA provider, look, I've put in 10 grand for other costs, and I'm still running ahead. Now, the other thing too is that there is a very high chance I can claim back the GST component on the build, because my SMSF, having such a high rental income, is going to need to be GST registered. Now, I'm saying maybe here because I've had one person out of 10, one accountant, say to me, yeah, I'm not quite sure of that. But we've pretty much had this verified by the company with the tax office, and that is the case if the SMSF is GST registered. Plus, of course, I can claim depreciation on the build and also the interest in that as well. So that just gives you a little bit of an overview of what I'm trying to achieve there. Now, because we're talking self-managed super funds, most investors in this space are really focused on high yield properties. And like I've spoken a lot about NDIS because that's the journey I'm going down at the moment. But once I'm able to complete this build, the next property I'm looking at is actually another high yield property, is going to be a rooming house. And I've got one here. I just wanted to share a couple of plans with you just to show you what these are. Now, you guys might be a lot more switched on than I am. When I started with SupaVest, I had no clue what a rooming house was. And look, we do have co-living properties as well as rooming house properties. And the way I sort of differentiate between the two, co-living to me is where you've got, say, a 3-bedroom, 3-bathroom house, but you've got communal kitchen, lounge, dining all in one. The rooming houses are essentially 5 mini suites within a house. Well, this example is Brisbane. I know in Victoria, for example, they can have up to 9. And I think that actually is similar to that in WA from memory. But with this example, you've got a mini suite here, which is a living. So they've got a bedroom, an ensuite, a little kitchenette, and the living area. And that is one whole little mini suite. And there's 5 of them within the house. They do have a communal main kitchen and a shared laundry area. Now, the reason being, these are a Class 1B build. Now, with a 1B build, you can only technically have one oven in the house. But of course, they've got these little baby kitchenettes throughout. Now, the rooming houses are absolutely going off in Brisbane in particular, and I believe in Victoria as well. The reason being, they provide a fantastic solution for a tenant. Each one of these suites is rented for around about $400 per week. Look, some of them are high 3s, some are up to $450 or higher, depending on the location and that type of thing. What's great about these from a renter's point of view is they take a lease just on their suite. They don't actually, gone are the days that someone has to actually take a lease on a whole house and then try and sublet the rooms. These now, we've got rooming house property managers. They come and, you can just take a lease on your own suite, and they actually rent fully furnished with power, water and NBN included as well. So for $400 a week, the tenant's just rocking up with their linen and they're set to go. From a landlord's point of view, the good thing that I like about this, if you have someone moving out, you've only lost 1/5 of your rental for a week or two until you fill that. You haven't lost the whole house rental until that refills. So very, very popular. They do come, these ones come with a 13.3 kilowatt solar included. Very, very popular as well. So that's those properties. And that's another one, that's a lower level, just a, one story instead of two. So that's pretty much just gives you a little bit of a rundown there on what we're all about. Just one more thing I just remembered. Let me just quickly jump back here. So I guess from here, any questions that you have? And also we've got a little call to action here if you want to register your details to either have a chat with me further, or you can obviously contact Lana, Roos directly. But if you mention this webinar, mention Lana's name, I'm happy to offer a $1,000 discount off any single part contract house and land packages as well that we've got going on at the moment. So I'll just leave that up for a quick second. But does anyone have any questions for me?
Hi, Lisa. Yep, thanks very much for that. Don here.
Hi, Don.
Hi. Do SupaVest steer potential investors in the right direction regarding builders and packages for these various building types, such as you've engaged in?
Yeah, look, good question. Like in regards to the NDIS, we only have on offer properties that actually have an STA provider connected to them. We do like to make sure that there is demand in the areas. Like we got sent a package recently, and I actually had one of my B2B clients, who is one of my selling agents, if you like, looking at a property. And when I jumped on what I was trying to show you, and that must have just updated that because I haven't looked at it for like a day or two, and it's changed on me. But anyway, when I jumped on the STA demand data, this was a little place in the Barossa Valley, and I looked on there and the data was showing 0,000 demand. And I just said, look, I don't know how that got through to us. I can't sell that to you confidently, because like if you want to buy it, you can buy it. But what I then did, I went and said, look, there's other packages here that I think you should look at more, because I can show you that there is demand in those areas. What we also try and do is put you in touch with the STA provider actually connected to the build and have a chat with them directly as well. Look, at the end of the day, as I said, we are facilitators. We here purely to facilitate this transaction for you. And yes, we are, I guess, the conduit between the builders providing house and land packages and the SMSF investor. We make that all happen. At the end of the day, it is up to the investor to do their due diligence. But of course, we're going to make sure that we're working with reputable builders. And yeah, in regards to NDIS, we do want to make sure that we are selling, good properties. But at the end of the day, it is up to the investor to actually do their due diligence in that area. With the rooming houses, with those, I can put you in touch with property managers that actually specialise in rooming house management, and they can give you an overall, idea about that as well. At the end of the day, we want any of our investors that come through, we want you to be successful. I'm here, obviously, I put my money where my mouth is. I'm client first, and now I'm here. But, it's choice at what you want to buy, where you want to buy to, Don. If you see something, look, I don't know how it works. It's not my field of expertise, but I even have some people that see a property that they want to buy now in their super fund because that's where they want to live in retirement. Now, as we understand, you can't live in a property owned by your SMSF. Now, whether there's a way that they can sell that to themselves on retirement, that's up to them. But sometimes we get people who they've made a decision they want to buy that particular property, and we'll package that up for them as well. Yeah.
Thanks.
I hope I answered that for you.
Yeah,
I didn't
very
waffle
well.
on too
No.
much. I'm
Yeah,
pretty
no,
good
very-
at waffling, as you probably noticed.
Not at all. No, it was good.
Good. Anyone else with any questions for me? Gosh, maybe everyone's hungry wanting dinner.
I will quickly ask you one question, Lisa, just in terms of what you've sold recently or facilitated recently, the price range, whether that be NDIS or non-NDIS properties, what are you seeing as available at the moment?
As a single part contract, ready to sell, look, we've got properties from, like, gosh, as low as, say, well, the odd one for 580-ish. They're probably in more regional areas. Obviously, it's the land, the closer to the city, it's going to be more expensive. Sort of between the 700 up to, 850 for, say, your standard house and lands in reasonable areas. With the NDIS, we've got some, say, in the west of, say, high 800s, right up to some NDIS can be 1.2, that type of thing. Rooming houses, some of them are around, say, the 1.1 to 1.3 mark. Yeah. But of course, these are, you're talking rooming houses that are returning around 100,000 plus a year in rent. NDIS, we've got some properties actually at the moment that are returning between 180 to 209,000 a year is the estimated rental return on them. And believe it or not, they're actually in more regional areas. A lot of people get quite caught up with buying in the sexy areas, if you like Southeast Queensland and, around cities and all these places. But where there's actually demand, especially for NDIS, is some of these more rural areas. We've got tremendous demand. We've had an STA provider come to us and going, oh, I've got 180 high physical support participants between these 3 locations, and areas that you probably wouldn't think to buy in, but they're the ones that are actually, he said, look, I'm going to be able to get 3 participants in each house, which is at the moment across Australia, there's average of 1.7 participants per NDIS house. So for him to be really confident to say, look, I'm confident I'm going to be able to get 3 participants in these houses. We've now got the plans through, and these are actually quite a big house. For an NDIS property, they're about 270 square metre property. They're on bigger land as well, and they're actually a 4-bedroom, 4-bathroom for 3 participants, and they've got a secondary living area. So, these are actually really quite good properties that have just come to us in the last sort of 2 weeks that we're putting together as well. And yeah, so look, it depends. I'd say probably lower chance of getting, massive capital growth there, but your rental return is really high. So it depends what you're trying to achieve, I guess, with your investment. If you're looking at trying to just get capital growth, but, your rental return might be a bit lower because you may be in an area that's perhaps a bit more saturated, or we go to these more regional areas where there's massive demand, but you're going to get maybe less capital growth. So it depends what you want to do in that regard.
Okay.
Yeah, that's all right. Anything else for me?
Hi, Lisa. It's Stefan here. I hope it works now. I've been trying with the mic on and off. Anywho, but it was very interesting to learn about all this. I quite like the tax benefits that you get. I quite like that you get to the choice of properties that you can build, like the rooming house. That's all new news to me. I've seen them, but I didn't know what it was all about. But I think
the only one.
And something that stood out for me was the insurance. So you get to do the build, the land and the construction, and you've got influence as a client in terms of who the builder is and the property and all that. But that there's insurance. When I talk to people about construction, it's often they're concerned about the builder going belly up.
Yep.
And you've mentioned that in your presentation, and that certainly gives me comfort that you're not going to end up like these people you see on Today Tonight and A Current Affair that ends up with a half-built house or a foundation and no walls. So that was very cool.
Exactly. And look, I'm glad you raised that because that's really quite a unique thing with our structure as well. Yes, every build has to have home warranty insurance as part of the build. But the other thing too is the SMSF investor goes into contract with SupaVest. SupaVest is actually the client of the builder throughout the build. So we're sort of almost like a bit of a buffer there. If the builder's going to go belly up, it's SupaVest that's going to be wearing that, and we are then going to have to find a replacement builder to be able to complete that property. So, in a way, there's a bit of a double protection there, if you like, because yes, we are contracted to the SMSF investor to sell that property and complete that property, but the builder is contracted to us in that regard. Yeah. And look, even this works really well with foreign investors too. We have quite a lot of foreign investors who actually want to build new house and land inside Australia, but doing it as a two-part contract and paying that, it's very difficult for them to actually get borrowings for a construction offshore. So if they pay a deposit and then essentially they're just settling at the end, same sort of thing. They're actually able to get funding for that as well, and it provides a lot of protection that way. Yeah. But no, very, very, very smart. I love it. I love it so much. I now work here, so it's a bit like the old Remington shavers ad. Don't know whether I'm showing my age here, but the old ad where it was, I loved it so much I bought the company. Well, I didn't buy the company, but now I'm working here, so there you go. It's saying something. Do you remember that, Don?
I do.
Good. Yeah. I'm not the only one.
No, and I've got some questions of Lana as well regarding age and all that sort of thing as far as borrowing goes. But yeah. No, it's exciting. It's certainly a very smart little structure, and very smart man, Raymond Hempstead, who came up with this idea. Mm-hmm. As I said, he had to work very, very closely with the ATO to make sure it's fully compliant. It meets all the rules of the SIS Act. It has a public ruling, so it's fully compliant in that regard. Look, there is other ways that we can work together too. In regards to, look, there's some scenarios. Say if someone I'm on a 2,000 square metre block here. It's rural residential, so I can't subdivide. But if it was a normal block, there is even an opportunity I could, if I wanted, subdivide, sell the subdivided block to SupaVest. SupaVest puts a property on it and then sells that completed property to my super fund. There's different structures like this that are actually possible as well. Look, we have a fractionalized investing product, which, I wasn't probably going to touch on here, but just while I'm on a roll, why not? And this is where we're actually building some high yield NDIS properties, and SupaVest retains 65% ownership, and then the remaining 35%, we're selling 75% shares. And these shares are around 56,000, a 5% share, and they're returning up to 11% net per annum paid monthly. Plus, you get your name on the title as tenants in common. So there's potential for capital growth as well as a really good rental return as well. Can sell at any time. Yeah.
Is that in personal names though? This shares?
It can be either. It can be the SMS or personal. Yeah. So that's actually for inside or outside super. I wasn't going to mention it in this presentation because it's a cash only purchase. It can't borrow for it, unfortunately. Yeah. You can imagine, Lana, the bank's having a little heart attack trying to figure out 8 names on a title.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, they'll run away.
Exactly.
Don, I'll just quickly say there shouldn't be a concern with age because it's a sort of more commercial minded, the arrangement. The SMSF needs to take care of itself. If your rental income can cover the expenditure without you making employment contributions, age is not a barrier.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions for me before we call it a night? No, Patrick?
All silent.
Yeah, it's good. All right, well, hopefully I've covered it off for you. Look, thank you so much, Lana, for inviting me along. It's been a pleasure. And yeah, look, if I can help you, anyone with anything, please reach out. My email is lisa@supavest.com, or of course, have a chat with Lana. Lana can help you access any of the single part contract packages that we actually have available now for sale, ready for sale, or have a chat with her and she can get in touch and we can turn any 2-part contract into a single part contract for you. And of course, she can do your mortgage for you. The one-stop shop over here.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. That was awesome. Thank you, Lana.
All
That
right.
was very valuable.
Yeah.
Everybody.
Thanks, Lana.
Thanks so much.
Lisa.
Have a great
Good night,
night.
everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
See
Talk soon.
Bye.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Tom. Bye.